Standing in a crowded room and I can't see your face. Put your arms around me, tell me everything's okay. In my mind I'm running round a cold and empty space. Just put your arms around me, tell me everything's okay. Break my bones, but you won't see me fall. Oh, the rising tide will rise against them all. Oh, darling, hold my hand. Oh, won't you hold my hand? 'Cause I don't wanna walk on my own anymore. Won't you understand? 'Cause I don't wanna walk alone. I'm ready for this. There's no denying. I'm ready for this. You stop me falling. I'm ready for this. I need you holding. I'm ready for this. So darling, hold my hand. Soul is like a melting pot when you're not next to me. Tell me that you got me and you're never gonna leave. Trying to find a moment where I can find relief. Please tell me that you got me and you're never gonna leave. Break my bones, but you won't see me fall. Oh, the rising tide will rise against them all. Oh, darling, hold my hand. Oh, won't you hold my hand? 'Cause I don't wanna walk on my own anymore. Won't you understand? 'Cause I don't wanna walk alone. I'm ready for this. There's no denying. I'm ready for this. You stop me falling. I'm ready for this. I need you holding. I'm ready for this. So darling, hold my hand. Don't wanna know that feeling when I'm all alone. So please don't make me wait, 'cause I don't wanna break. No, I don't wanna fall. When you're next to me, content I'm not afraid to be. You don't make me wait and never let me break. You never let me fall. Darling, hold my hand. beats are alive now and everything's racing. You're on my mind, running in my veins, fueling the flame. Let's start it again. And I know that we're losing light. Our love is dying. I'll roll on the floor like a falling star that
Good morning, early service. Look at you, intrepid early servicers who showed up an hour earlier than normal. So just so you guys know, we're going to be an hour worse than we normally are. Or it's an hour different. So it's going to be real cool. Will you stand with us? We're going to sing some songs together. This is a new one, but we like it, and we really hope you also will like it.
There once was crowned with thorns, is crowned with glory now. The Savior nailed to wash our feet, now at His feet we bow. The one who wore our sin and shame, now robed in majesty, the radiance of perfect love now shines for all to see. Your name is victory. All praise will rise to Christ our King. Your name is victory. And all praise will rise to Christ our King. The fear that held us now gives way to Him who is our peace. His final breath upon the cross is now alive in me. Your name is victory. All praise will rise to Christ our King. Your name is victory. All praise will rise to Christ our King. By your Spirit I will rise from the ashes of defeat. The resurrected King is resurrecting me. In your name I come alive to declare your victory. The resurrected King is resurrecting me. By your Spirit I will rise from the ashes of defeat. The resurrected King is resurrecting me. In your name I come alive to declare your victory. The resurrected King is resurrecting me. By your Spirit I will my soldiers watched in vain, was borrowed for 3 days. His body they would not remain. Our God has robbed the grave. Our God has robbed the my
give life, and you are love. You bring light to the darkness. You give hope, and you restore every heart that is broken. Great are you, Lord. It's your breath in our lungs, so we pour out our praise. We pour out our praise. It's your breath in our lungs, so we pour out our praise to you only. You give life, and you are love. You bring light to the darkness. You give hope, and you restore every heart that is broken. And great are you, Lord. It's your breath in our lungs, so we pour out our praise. We pour out our praise. It's your breath in our lungs, so we pour out our praise to you only. It's your breath in our lungs, so we pour out our praise. We pour out our praise. It's your breath in our lungs, so we pour out our praise to you only. And all the earth will shout your praise. Our hearts will cry. These bones will say, great are you, Lord. And all the earth will shout your praise. Our hearts will cry. These bones will say, great are you, Lord. And all the earth will shout your praise. Our hearts will cry. These bones will say, great are you, Lord. It's your breath in our lungs, so we pour out our praise. We pour out our praise. It's your breath in our lungs, so we pour out our praise to you only. It's your breath in our lungs, so we pour out our praise. We pour out our praise. It's your breath in our lungs, so we pour out our praise to you only. It's your breath in our lungs, so we pour out our praise. We pour out our praise. It's your breath in our lungs, so we pour out our praise to you only.
You guys can have a seat. We're going to move into a time of communion here this morning. And this is how we choose to remember and recognize the sacrifice that Jesus made for us. How we choose to come and remember what we sang about, that the resurrected King has resurrected each of us. That we have this God that came and he lived as man, he suffered on a cross, and he bled, and he died. And 3 days later, he came back. 3 days later, he rose from the grave so that he could rise us from ours. So that we would no longer be asleep, be laying in the grave, and be lost in darkness. Our God died to rescue us. Our God saw everything that was stacked against us, all of the death and all of the darkness and all of the sin and everything in this world that was against us, and he came and he conquered it. He came to be victorious over the powers of this world, to give us life, to wake us up, to allow us to live free. So what's going to happen? Some trays are going to go up and down the aisle with a wafer and a cup of juice representing the blood and body. Take one of each of those and take it on your own time. We're not going to come back up and do it together. But let this be a moment as you take these elements, as you take this gift, to remember that we've been given the gift of victory. The things that held us in bondage have been defeated. All we have to do is accept that. All we have to do is stop submitting to them. All we have to do is reach out and take the grace that is being given and offered to us and walk into our identity as victors, as conquerors. If you've never been here with us before, you're going to hear people shattering those little plastic cups, and it's a tangible reminder that those things that have been broken will always be broken. That when our God said it is finished, he meant it. Those things can never be put back together. And if all of this is just weird and you don't know what I'm talking about and you're uncomfortable with this, there's no shame in that. Just pass it around to the next person. It's totally fine. Pass it along and rest easy knowing that you're safe and welcome here. If you have questions about what this is, there'll be an opportunity later. But for now, just keep the train moving. Let's pray. We'll share in that meal, and then we'll sing one last song together. God, we thank you for your love. Thank you for this love that isn't quiet and isn't passive, but a love that came into this world and conquered everything that stood in its path. Everything that stood between your love and us was laid waste, God. And that you've achieved victory on our behalf. And we ask as we share in this meal that you begin to teach us how to not live like victims, how to not live like slaves, but to live like the victorious conquerors that you have made each of us. How do we walk in the victory that you won for us? In your name we pray. Amen. You guys stand with us for one more song.
Awake, all you dreamers. Awake and be free to dream the dreams of him who was slain, who was beaten, warring of a land that could never be defeated. Arise, all you sleeping. Arise, begin to sing the song of our redemption. The victory is ours, we can never be defeated. So come alive, come alive. Out of the word we will rise. So come alive, come alive. Out of the word we will rise. and we sing sad. You've been defeated, dead. Where is your victory? You've lost your sting, and I'll come out of my grave. You guys can have a seat.
So you lost an hour of sleep and you still made it to first service. Way to go. Way to go. Yeah, give yourselves a hand for that. That's awesome. Second service is going to be packed. That's all I'm saying. Hey, good morning to you. Good to see you, and welcome to this place that we call DCC, a place that is not perfect and doesn't have it all figured out, not by any means, by any stretch, but a place where all of your story is safe and welcome every single week, regardless of how it reads, a place where you belong, regardless of what you believe, even if it doesn't line up with what we believe, and a Me Too place full of people not who used to be like you, not who tolerate or put up with people like you, not who fix people like you. We can't fix anyone. People exactly like you, a place full of people exactly like you. And I hope you've already felt that. You've experienced that already in the half hour or so you've spent with us today. And you've already decided you want to come back and do this again with us in the very near future. So special shout out to and welcome to you if you're brand new friend here for the first time, and to all of our online friends, old and new, who are watching us right now too. So we're in this series called Love Recovers, and we're really talking about the strength, the power, the benefit, and the value of God's love for all of us, and how really the best place for us to really get a grip on that love, or to really see that love, it best plays out in the last few days of the life of his son Jesus. And so we started last week by talking about Jesus is in the upper room with his disciples, and they do this thing called the Last Supper, which is communion, which is what we just did together a few minutes ago. And then they leave the upper room and they walk outside, and when they do that, everything changes. Everything in the stories changes, because now we're talking about an arrest. Now we're talking about a series of trials, and the trial attorney in me, the former state prosecutor in me, just kind of comes to the surface, and all kinds of things like due process and justice and the law starts spinning around. So speaking of the law, you know, there's some pretty wonky laws out there on the books. I was looking back this past week, and in the last 10 years, did you know that in one state here in our country, in one state, it was against the law, in the last 10 years, it's been against the law to wear cowboy boots unless you own at least 2 cows. Isn't that amazing? That was still on the books. I mean, it's like, excuse me, ma'am, you're wearing cowboy boots. May I see your cows? I don't think that's a good idea. But there's that one. Then there's Christmas lights. Like if you have your Christmas lights still on, February 2nd is the date, $250 fine. And some of you are like, man, I wish somebody tell my neighbors that. Yeah, somebody's applauding, right? I wish that was a law in Colorado, right? In Tennessee, it's illegal to gather and consume roadkill. It is. It's also illegal to have 5 or more than 5 inoperable vehicles sitting in your front yard. Now I have lots of cousins who live in Kentucky, down near the border where my dad grew up, and they're glad that's a Tennessee law and not a Kentucky law. I'm just saying. I read one more that said a woman cannot buy a hat without her husband's permission. That's crazy, right? I think shoes would have been a better law myself, but that's just me. So anyway, despite all these crazy laws, right, these wonky laws, these ridiculous laws that are on the books out there, all of us recognize the need for some law, order, justice in the world that we live in today. There is something inside of all of us, as we sit here this morning, there's something inside of all of us that hates injustice. We just can't stand. We hate injustice. Whether it's the bully who beats up the smaller kid and steals his lunch money, or it's the manipulative, dishonest employee who gets the promotion instead of the honest, hardworking person who should have gotten it, or it's the referee that blows the call in the last few seconds of the game, so the team that should have won the game didn't win the game, but it's not their fault, or it's the innocent person who goes to prison for something they didn't do. I mean, I could go on and on. It doesn't matter how big or how small it is. Injustice is something that doesn't sit well with any of us. If you don't believe me, maybe this will help. Let's watch this.
May God have mercy on your soul. You have to say it. You have to give the order. He kill them with their love. That's how it is every day, all over the world.
It's hard to watch. See, if you don't know the story, that's the movie The Green Mile, and John Coffey is charged with something horrible, something terrible, something that he did not do, something that he will ultimately die in the electric chair for. And so as we're watching that, knowing that, everything inside of us is screaming, no, stop it. You have to stop it. No, 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 no. Why is that rising up in us? Because injustice is something that doesn't sit well with any of us. And so here's the question. How and when did we become so numb to the story of this man named Jesus? I mean, we know he walked the earth. Secular historians, not religious historians, secular historians record that. They talk about what a good man he was. They talk about how the Romans brutally crucified him. We don't need the Bible. You don't need this book that we read from every single week. You don't even need any of that. We don't need this book for any of that. And so the question is, have we discounted the unfairness and injustice that Jesus suffered, or have we just heard this story? Has this story just become so familiar to us that it's just lost something with us? Because see, here's the deal. There has never been, and there will never be, a greater act of love than the love of God for us as we see it play out in the last day or so of His Son, Jesus. And maybe you're sitting here today and you're like, I'm not so sure I really believe that. That's okay. We're really glad you're here. Let's just jump back into the story where we picked it up. Pick up where we left off last week. Let's jump back into the story. Let's walk through this together. Let's ask some questions. Let's talk about it, talk through it, and let's just see. All right? All right, let's do it. We're going to be to Matthew, Mark, and Luke today. Three different books of the Bible. We're going to start in Luke chapter 22 today. So if you got a Bible, you want to turn there, that's great. There's Bibles on the back tables if you want to grab one right now. If you can't get it now, get it on your way out and take it home with you. Love for you to have one. You can hit our app or YouVersion if you're a phone person, or you can just read with me on the screens. We got lots and lots of verses to read today. Lots of story to read today. So Luke chapter 22, starting with verse 39. Jesus went out as usual to the Mount of Olives, and his disciples followed him. And on reaching the place, he said to them, "Pray that you will not fall into temptation." And he withdrew about a stone's throw beyond them, knelt down and prayed, "Father, if you are willing, take this cup from me. Yet not my will, but yours be done." And an angel of heaven appeared to him and strengthened him. And being in anguish, he prayed more earnestly, and his sweat was like drops of blood falling to the ground. All right, let's stop right there. So we're picking up the story right where we left off last week. Last week, at the end, after they had communion together, it says they sang a hymn, and then they went out to the Mount of Olives. And so now, here we are. We're there. Now, just before this, in the last hour or so, Jesus has told his disciples, here's what I'm getting ready to do. I'm going to die for you. So Jesus says, I'm going to die for you. And then within an hour, here we are on the Mount of Olives. He gets away from his disciples, out of earshot, and he prays, "Father, take this cup from me. Can we change the plan?" And you listen to the story and you're going, well, that doesn't seem very loving. Maybe not. You know what it sounds like to me? It sounds very human. It sounds very human. And see, that's an important part of this story. You may be saying, oh, it doesn't sound very loving. Hey, hang on to that. That's why it's so important that we talk about everything that Jesus says and everything that Jesus does here in this moment. So, first observation for us as we jump back into this journey together today. Are you ready? Love keeps priorities in the face of pain. Love keeps its priorities in the face of pain. Now, so Jesus is kneeling on the Mount of Olives, and he's praying. And as he's doing that, things are getting really, really real for him really, really fast. 33 years old. He's done 3 years of ministry. It's imminent. His time has come. It's on him right now. So the question is Jesus feeling pressure in this moment? Of course he is. Sure he is. He is sweating blood. Now, Luke is the only one of the gospel writers that records that detail. His sweat was like drops of blood falling to the ground. I think it's important. Maybe it's because Luke was a medical doctor is the reason that he wrote that. Medical doctors today talk about this condition. I think it's called hematidrosis, that where you're so stressed out and you're so anxious that your body releases chemicals. It kind of messes with your capillaries, and then all of a sudden, boom, your sweat comes out. It's tinged with a little bit of blood. Is that what's happening here with Jesus? We don't know. But we do know this. This moment is intense for Jesus. This moment, this is one of the most pressure-packed moments of his entire life. And yet, check this out. In the midst of the pressure, he hangs on to what he himself has taught to be the greatest commandment of all. Father, your will above my wants and others before me. Real love keeps priorities in the face of pressure, in the face of pain. Now, I don't know about you, but as I think about this whole greatest commandment thing that Jesus lays out for us, it's been, in my life, it's probably been one of the most conditional commandments for me. So is God others me, we used to sing about that in Sunday school, right? J-O-Y or whatever it's called. But God others me, is that the priority system that I'm really running my life on? And the answer is, it depends. It depends on what? It depends on my circumstances. Because here's what happens. When pain and pressure comes into my life, just somehow, some way, me tends to work its way up the priority list. Kind of goes to the top of the priority list. How about you, right? I mean, I really have to continue. I've gotten so much better at this over the course of my life. 53 years, gotten better, but I still have to watch that. My guess is we all do. But here's the thing I want to tell you. I've seen you make great strides here. So I want to pause here before we go any further. I just want to brag on you for just a minute. So we just did this series, just finished up a series, 3 weeks talking about our money and our finances. And you're like, please no more. Okay, I'm not. Okay, I just want to make a comment about it. All right, so why do we talk about money and finances? Because when we talk about priorities, God, others, me, man, this is the hardest place for us to put God first in our lives when it's with our money. And so we talked about that. And when the pain and pressure comes financially, whoop, me goes to the top of the list, me too, so many times in my life. And so here's what I want you to know about you. Here's what I want you to know about you. Last month, in the month of February, 152 new families or new people set up recurring giving here at DCC. Yeah, you need to give that up. You need to applaud that. That's amazing. Let me tell you how significant that is. We more than doubled where we were going into February. That's amazing. You can clap for that too. That's amazing. So, I say that because you don't hear enough good stuff. I'm so proud of you. I'm blown away by you. Thanks for having the courage to take God up on the challenge and on the test. And I can't wait to hear all the cool stories that are going to come out of that in our lives and stories over the next 5-6 months. It's going to be good stuff. So we talk about that because God, others, me. It's hard to keep God at the top of the priority list financially, but it's not just a money thing. When it comes to marriage or relationships or jobs or careers or health or whatever it is, when pain and pressure comes into this specific area of my life, it is so easy for our priorities to flip. It is so easy for our priorities to flip when the pain comes or when the pressure is on. So the question is, where are Jesus' priorities in this moment? Now you can read, if you just read the first thing he says and you say, Father, can we change the plan? You can think, well, his priorities on himself. But here's the thing you need to realize. He doesn't even wait for an answer from his Father. He doesn't wait for his Father to throw out some alternatives. Here's 5 other alternatives. How about we kill Peter? Or Judas. No. Jesus says what? He says, can you take this cup from me? And then boom, right on the heels of that, he says, if not, I'm good. I'm good. What are Jesus' priorities in this moment? His Father, his Father's plan, and you and me. Real love keeps its priorities in the face of pain. That's what we're seeing of Jesus in this moment. All right, so Jesus prays. Another gospel account, his knucklehead buddies, they fall asleep. He wakes them up. They fall asleep again. It's sad. But anyway, they finish prayer time. Jesus finished praying. He looks up, and there's Judas. He's with the guards, and so bam, they arrest Jesus. and they lead him away. Now, I want us to flip to Matthew chapter 26. We're going to pick the story up right there, verse 57, all right? Matthew 26, verse 57. Here's the deal. We're shifting to another book, exact same story, exact same moment in the exact same story, just a different camera angle that we're going to see here, okay? So here we go. Verse 57. Those who had arrested Jesus took him to Caiaphas, the high priest, where the teachers of the law and the elders had assembled. But Peter followed him at a distance, right up to the courtyard of the high priest. He entered the courtyard and he sat down with the guards to see the outcome. Okay. All right. So I want us to do something. I don't know if I've ever done this before at DCC. I want to throw a map up on the screens. All right. So I'm going to throw a map up on the screens and check this out. He's got a laser pointer. All right. I'm going to do it on this screen over here. Sorry, folks. Hopefully you can see because this, so our live stream folks, all of our live stream folks that are watching out there, they can see this. This is a map of Jerusalem at the time of Jesus. Okay. Now, here's why I want to put it up here. So I'm going to put, let's say, oh, look at that. I can actually see the little beam. That's amazing. And so, so there we go. Okay, so the upper room over in this area, the house of Caiaphas, where he just got taken, is right here. I'm trying to draw a circle. I've had too much caffeine. There you go. So there you go, right there. That's the area where he was. Now, so they have the Last Supper here. They go through the gate. They go up here. Here's Gethsemane up here, up on the Mount of Olives. Okay, whoo, shaking. So that's where they are when Jesus gets arrested. They take him back down through the Kidron Valley, through the gate over here to the house of Caiaphas, to the house of the high priest. Now, here's what you need to know. So this is the Mount of Olives. This is actually Mount Zion over here. So you've got two mountains divided by the Kidron Valley right here. So it's downhill, then it's uphill. Everything in the city of Jerusalem is downhill this way. Okay, so down that way. So this is all higher elevation up in here. This is all high, so kind of all drains down to this corner. All right. So that's just kind of the general geography there of the city of Jerusalem. Let's talk about this guy named Caiaphas for just a second before we move on. So he's the Jewish high priest. Here's a guy who's not at all interested in what is fair. He doesn't care about justice at all. He is a guy who initiated the plot to kill Jesus. He was the guy that got it all going. Go to John chapter 11. You can study and read there, and you'll see that's true. So he initiates this plot, and now he looks up, and Jesus is right there in his house in front of him, and he has this opportunity to finish what he started. All right, so that's where we are in the story. Let's keep going. The chief priests and the whole Sanhedrin were looking for false evidence against Jesus so that they could put him to death. But they did not find any, though many false witnesses came forward. Finally, 2 came forward and declared, "This fellow said, I am able to destroy the temple of God and rebuild it in 3 days." Then the high priest stood up and said to Jesus, "Are you not going to answer? What is this testimony that these men are bringing against you?" But Jesus remained silent. And the high priest said to him, "I charge you under oath by the living God. Tell us if you are the Messiah, the Son of God." Okay, so I want to pause here in the story before we get to Jesus' answer. And I want to pause because the trial attorney in me is just having some fundamental problems with all the unfairness and the injustice that's swirling around in this story. So I want to talk about that for just a second. Before I do that, though, I want to make this point, all right? Love conquers unfairness and injustice. Love conquers unfairness and injustice. Why is that so important? Because there's a lot of unfairness and there's a lot of injustice going on here. There's lots of questions that come to my mind as I read this story. Like, did they have probable cause to arrest Jesus? No. You can argue that if you want. I don't think you're going to be successful. So there's no probable cause. There's no presumption of innocence. There's no right to call witnesses. There's no right to confront or cross-examine witnesses. There seems to be no evidence whatsoever. There's really no case. You know, I was reading in Jewish law in this day, you had to have 2 witnesses who had the exact same testimony in order to proceed, in order to move the case forward. That's what we just read. It said what? It says they're looking for false evidence against Jesus so they could kill him, but they didn't find any, though many false witnesses came forward. What does that mean? It means these liars couldn't even get their lie straight. They couldn't find 2 liars who had the same lie. And then it finally, because then it says what? Finally, 2 came forward and declared what? The exact same thing. And that's when the high priest goes, "Gotcha." Boom. That's what's happening in this moment in the story. As written in Jewish law at this time, once you are put under oath, Caiaphas just put Jesus under oath. I charge you under oath. Once that happens, you no longer have a right to remain silent. When you think about what's fair and what's just, there's a whole lot of unfairness and there's a whole lot of injustice in this moment with Jesus. So what does that have to do with you and me? What does that have to do with us? That's a great question. Let's talk about that. There are lots of things in this moment that are being said to Jesus and about Jesus that aren't true. There are lots of things in this moment that are being done to Jesus that are not fair. He doesn't deserve any of this. Does that sound at all familiar to you? Sure it does. Of course it does. This is our stories. This is every one of our stories. There are things in all of our lives and stories that have been done to us, things that have been said to us, things that have been said about us that aren't fair, that aren't true, and that we don't deserve. And so my question is, what have we done with all the unfairness and the injustice in our lives that have left such scars in our lives? And the answer for most of us is, really, we haven't done anything with it. And to be fair, we don't even really know what to do. And so what am I pointing to here? I'm pointing to part of the beauty of this place you find yourself sitting in today. It doesn't make us better. It just makes us different. I'm pointing to the 3 circles. You're like, do we have to see it again? Yes, I'm going to throw it up here again. There it is, okay? Last series, because this is important. You come in here, every one of us comes in here, you're looking for a better life. Tell me how to find this better life. There you is. There's the diagram, right? So we talked about living on mission in the last series. I want to talk about discovering your story. Actually, I want to talk about that red space today. Discover your story and experience Jesus. We must discover our stories. We must stay in our stories, and we must invite Jesus into that space, the love of Jesus into our stories, so that we can experience all that God has for us. Why? Because there's been a lot of unfairness and a lot of injustice in all of our lives and stories, and the love of God really does help us a lot with that. Stacy and I were over at the Ransom Tart Outpost last Thursday night and Friday and just hanging with a little bit of the staff and a few other couples and just doing some heart work. It was really, really good. And so we're in a room with a staff couple and another couple that we didn't really know, and we just get acquainted a little bit. And then I got nominated to go first. So you just talk about 2-3 minutes, what's going on in your life and story, and then we're going to do some prayer. We're going to do some listening prayer. So Jesus, what do you have for Greg in this? And we're sitting there, and this lady, she says to me, she says, hey, Greg, she says, I got this vision. I'm seeing you on a basketball court. She said, you're really, really young, 12, 13 years old. She said, and you're mad, or you're angry, or you're agitated, or you're frustrated, or it seems like it's all about the last great pass, or the last shot you made, the last win you had. You've got something to prove. And I'm sitting there, I'm like, oh my gosh. I mean, I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Why? Because she didn't know me. And she doesn't know this season of my life. She doesn't know this part of my story. I haven't shared any of that at all with her. And boom, here it is right in front of me. See, basketball was my safe place growing up. Basketball was my refuge. Basketball was the place where I could be confident. Basketball was my proving ground. Basketball, the basketball court for me was a place I could prove I have worth and I have value. I have worth and I have value. And I know, I'm skinny and I'm scrawny and I'm ugly. And I know you'd rather be dead than red on the head. But I promise you I have worth and I have value. I have worth, I have value. Come here, I will show you. See, basketball and the basketball court for me was the place that I could silence all those voices that said those mean, hurtful, hateful things to me about me. It was a place where I could medicate the pain of all the things that have been done to me, said to me, and said about me, all the unfairness and the injustice that I'd faced in my young life. That's what basketball was for me. And see, we all turn to something. Basketball was the first thing I turned to. I've turned to so many things since then. We all turn to something, and here's the deal. God is usually not on the list. The love of the Father is usually not a part of that list, and it's not our fault. We don't even realize. Most of us don't even realize that it's an option for us. In this moment in Jesus' life, all of his friends are gone. You know, hell breaks loose. The going gets tough, and boom, they're gone. The only place Jesus has to go, the only place that he has to lean or to turn into or to lean into is the love of his Father here. And guess what? That is all he needs. It's all he needs. It is that love that helps him conquer all the unfairness and all the injustice that he's facing in this moment in his life. And it is that exact same love that helps us conquer the unfairness and the injustice that we have faced and we continue to face in our lives and stories too. And so I'm really hopeful. Here's my hope. I hope that you don't leave here today without talking with us more about that and what that could look like in your life. All right, let's go back to the story. So Caiaphas asked this question. And listen, I want you to listen how Jesus responds. Now we're going to Mark. Mark chapter 14. Again, same moment, same story, different camera angle. That's why this stuff is so confusing, okay? But let's keep tracking. We're just tracking through the same story. So are you the Messiah, the Son of God? Verse 62. I am, said Jesus, and you will see the Son of Man sitting at the right hand of the Mighty One, or the Father, coming on the clouds of heaven. The high priest tore his clothes. Why do we need any more witnesses, he asked. You've heard the blasphemy. What do you think? And they all condemned him as worthy of death. Guilty, 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 guilty. There's the verdict. Then some began to spit at him. They blindfolded him, struck him with their fists, and said, prophesy. And the guards took him and beat him. All right. So when Stace and I were in Israel back in December of last year, first time we'd ever been there, our first stop was on the Mount of Olives. So we went to Gethsemane, the Garden of Gethsemane, the spot where Jesus prayed, was arrested. And then our second stop was the house of Caiaphas. It's this house, okay? And as we're getting off the tour bus and we're walking up to the house, there's a church built on top of it. They do that in the Middle East to preserve these sites. And so, so as we're walking up the house, Tony, our tour guide, who's a really, really cool guy. He's an archaeologist. He's a professor at the university. He speaks 6 languages, and he's an officer in the Israeli army. So he's just a cool dude. But we're walking up to the house, and he goes, he says, 2-3 months ago, I would have told you I was 75% sure this is the actual house of Caiaphas, where Jesus was on that night. I said, cool. He says, yep. He says, now I'm 100% sure. I said, well, what changed? He said, we were doing some digging here in the last 2 or 3 months at the site, and we dug out this stone, and it said, House of Caiaphas. He said it was the headstone that went above the door, and it just blew my mind. I was like, can we see it? Do we get to see it? He's like, no, we took it to the museum. They're getting it ready. It's going to be public here in the next few months. And so it just totally blew me away. I'm like walking up. But I was even more blown away when I stood there, because I'm standing in the courtyard outside of the house. That's where Peter would have been. Remember what we just read? And he entered the outer courtyard. See, that's where the guards would be. They would build fires at night when it would get cool. And so Peter's sitting around a fire with some guards and some other people. And as I stood there, I realized, and I started to take this thing in a way that I'd never taken it in before. Yes, Peter denied Jesus, and I'm thinking, what a chicken. But here's the thing. Peter was close enough. He was right there. He could have heard everything that's going on inside of that house. And in my mind, I'm like, so what's the big deal? They're just questioning Jesus. Maybe they're raising their voices a little bit. It wasn't until I was standing in Israel in December and being reminded of this story that I really paid attention to what Mark wrote there, that last sentence. And the guards took him and beat him. Jesus was beaten at the house of Caiaphas. And when I walked into that house, everything became really, really clear for me. So I want to show you a picture. So you walk in the house, and so it's down below, right? And so in the Middle East, they build houses in front of or on top of caves. And so this would have been the stable area where they kept the animals down below. So we're walking down there. But as they excavated and dug this place out, they found this. There it is. And so they would take the accused, and they would tie their hands up, and they would beat them. So when they dug this place out, they noticed that the stone below this spot was different. And so some rich people, I don't know who, paid to have this block of stone taken out, and they sent it away for all this expensive testing. You know what they found? All kinds of levels of human blood. See, there was a lot more that happened at the house of Caiaphas than I ever realized. And after they beat someone, they would take them and they'd string them up by a rope, hands above their head, and they'd hang them. They'd drop them down into this pit that was inside of the house. They'd drop them down into the darkness of this pit, totally pitch black. They'd leave them hanging about that far off the floor, but they didn't know where the floor was. And so here we are. Here's a picture of us. We're standing down in that pit. I look a little confused up there at the top left. But actually, you know what I'm looking at? I'm looking up to the very top, because up at the top you can see where the rope came across the stone, and the rope where the person the accused was hanging was where it worn out in the stone where they were lowering people down into this pit. And so I'm looking up in that. And so they drop them down in this pit, and then here's the last picture. There was this window up above. Whoops, we lost it. There it is. And the guards would take rocks Person hanging in the darkness can't see a thing, and they just drop rocks down on top of them as they're hanging below in this pit. So it's highly likely that Jesus was hanging in the darkness that night. Already been beaten, rocks falling down on top of him. And so we stood down there in that pit and we read the story. And then we sang this hymn. It was really cool. There was a Nigerian group right in front of us, and they were down in the pit before we went down. And they sang a hymn in their Nigerian language. It was amazing. But I'm standing there in this pit, and it just became so real for me. And I was overwhelmed. You know what I was overwhelmed by? I was overwhelmed by how much Jesus loves us. And in that moment, I'm sitting there thinking about it, how much Jesus loves us. I was overwhelmed by how unjust and unfair every step of this journey was. And it was there that I realized that the only way for you and me, to really grasp and understand and get God's love for us, this unconditional, life-changing, resilient, conquering love that Jesus has for us, is for us to walk this journey with Him every step of the way. And that's why we're doing this series. So let's go back to the story and let's finish this up for today. So the next morning they convict him, guilty, but they realize that they can't execute him. They don't have the power and the authority to kill anyone. The Romans have to do that. And so here we go. Luke chapter 23 now, different camera angle, verse 1. Then the whole assembly rose, they led him off to Pilate, and they began to accuse him, saying, "We found this man subverting our nation. He opposes payment of taxes to Caesar." Time out. Do you remember when Jesus says, "Give to Caesar what is Caesar," on the coin? You remember that? These guys are just liars. Imagine that. He claims to be Messiah, king. So Pilate asked Jesus, "Are you the king of the Jews? You have said so." Or, "Yes," Jesus replied. Then Pilate announced to the chief priests and the crowd, he says, "I find no basis for a charge against this man." But they insisted. He stirs up the people all over Judea by his teaching. He started in Galilee, that's the key, and has come all the way here. On hearing this, Pilate asked if the man was a Galilean, because Pilate is a coward, he's a chicken, he doesn't want to deal with this. And when he learned that Jesus was under Herod's jurisdiction because he was a Galilean, he sent him to Herod, who was also in Jerusalem at that time. When Herod saw Jesus, he was greatly pleased because he had for a long time been wanting to see him. From what he had heard about him, he hoped to see him perform a sign of some sort. So Herod gets Jesus in front of him. He's looking for a circus. He's like, "Jesus, make somebody's arm go back on, or, heal somebody or raise the dead." He's just trying to have a circus. And so Herod mocks him, after that. He said, he plied him with many questions, but Jesus gave no answer. The chief priests and the teachers of the law were standing there vehemently accusing him. Then Herod and the soldiers ridiculed. They mocked him, dressing him in an elegant robe. They sent him back to Pilate. All right, so back to the map. Let's go back to the map just a second. I want you to see this. There we go. All right, so here's the house of Caiaphas down here. Caiaphas, they try him, but they can't execute him, so they say guilty, and then they send him to Pilate. Now Pilate is up here, Antonio's fortress. This is where the Roman soldiers would be. This is where the 10th Legion would be. Pilate would be staying here when he's in Jerusalem. So there it is. So they're going to lead him from down here up in here. So that's about half mile or so. All right, so he gets to Pilate. Pilate says, I'm a chicken. I want to send him to Herod. Herod's palace is over here. This is Herod's palace, all right? So they take him over to Herod. Herod ridicules him, mocks him, and then he's like, nope, sends him back over to Pilate. All right, now, what's the point? The point is this. I was doing some research this past week. Give or take 3 miles from the time Jesus is arrested to the time they raise that cross. And you're like, well, 3 miles, not a big deal. Well, think about it. A lot of this is uphill. Right? He's been beaten. For most of it, he's already been beaten. At least once and then twice. And then he's carrying a cross for part of it. He's exhausted. He's a bloody mess. What's the point? The point is this. Everything about this is so unfair and so unjust. It is absolutely, completely brutal. It's horrible. And yet, here's the good news. Jesus was not a victim. He was on a mission. He wasn't a victim. He could have stopped it. His father could have stopped it. They didn't. He wasn't a victim. He was on a mission, and that mission was me and it was you. It was us. It was our lives, our stories, our hearts, our broken hearts. That's what kept Jesus going. God didn't insulate him or numb the pain. I tell you what, Jesus, go down there, and when it gets hard, I'm just going to numb you up. You're not going to feel a thing. Just go through the motions, and we'll get through this. No, he felt every bit of it. He was betrayed, and he didn't quit. and he was mocked and he didn't quit, and he was ridiculed and he didn't quit, and he was spit on and he didn't quit. He was blindfolded and punched, he didn't quit. He was slapped, he didn't quit. He was beaten and he didn't quit. He was dragged and he didn't quit. And we haven't even gotten to the worst part of the story yet. That's the next few weeks. There is much more excruciating pain to come over the life of this innocent man before he will ever die. Listen, this is the difference in this and the Green Mile. In the Green Mile, John Coffey walks from his jail cell. I can't say that, I'm from Kentucky. Jail cell. Down the hallway, right? Down the hallway to the electric chair, right? The path of Jesus to the cross, from his arrest to the cross, looks so much different than that. And they kept knocking him down, and he kept getting up. And they knocked him down again, and he kept getting up. And they punched him, and he got up again. His focus and his passion remained on the mission. It remained on you and me, and it was like this. I got to get to that cross. 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 Why? Because you and I are absolutely hopeless without the cross. Jesus had to get to the cross so our sin issue could be dealt with once and for all. He had to get to the cross so that his Spirit could be present inside of us. See, his followers, when all hell broke loose, they ran. The going got tough. We're out of here. Why? Because they didn't realize really what was going on. They're thinking, I can't imagine my life without Jesus with me. And what they didn't understand was this journey that Jesus takes to and through the cross was going to bring them something better. What they didn't get was Jesus with me is nothing compared to Jesus, the Spirit, the heart, the life, the love of Jesus living inside of me. And that's what's available to every single one of us sitting here today because of this story. Jesus was not a victim. He was on a mission. Last week when I was over at the outpost and they were praying for me, I realized that I've been on that basketball court for the past 10 years here in Colorado Springs, trying to prove something. Trying to prove I've got worth and I've got value and I've got worth and I've got value. I promise you I have worth and I have, come here, I'll show you. I just want to tell you, I'm so tired of living like that. And so we went after that stuff in my life and story together. We just put it out there, and I confessed it, and I repented of it, and I broke the agreements. I've got something to prove. I have to prove myself. I don't have worth. I got to prove I have worth. I broke all the agreements. We prayed after. We brought the love of the Father into that. We brought the blood of Jesus into that space in my life, and I walked out of the outpost different. I said, you know what? That's the old story. It's not the story. I'm going to live in a new story. My head's going to be held high. I'm going to walk out of here different. I've had 2 or 3 kind of line in the sand moments in my life. Last week was one of them. You see, here's the thing. I don't have anything to prove. I don't have anything to prove. Jesus died for me. And his blood covers me. And his love fills me. And his Spirit lives in me. And guess what? That's enough for me. That's enough for me. And I want you to know something. It's enough for you too. And so, yeah, The Green Mile, it's a sad movie. An innocent man died. But it pales in comparison to this story we're walking through in this series. Because an innocent man not only died, an innocent man suffered and died for me. See, this is not just a fictional story that we're watching play out on the screen. This is a story that we're living in. It's my story, and it's your story too. And yes, it was unjust. And yes, it was unfair. But Jesus just kept going. His love kept us a priority the entire time. His love helps us conquer all the unfairness and injustice that we face in our lives. Yeah, that's what the love of Jesus does in our lives. And his love helps us recover. It is his love that helps us recover when it seems like there is no hope. Jesus was not a victim. He was on a mission, and that mission was you, and that mission was me, and we were worth it. We were worth it. So, I'm hoping you hang on to that for the rest of this week till we pick the story up again next week. So much more to say, so much more to talk about. We're out of time. So thanks for being here with us this weekend. Hey, I really hope you come back as we pick up the story. Exact same spot, exact same time, exact same place next week. Let me pray for us. Jesus. There's so much to this. So much to your passion and your love for us that I've missed. It's so easy to go, yeah, I know the story, arrested and Yeah, beaten and crown of thorns, hung on a cross, stabbed in the side, dies for me. Yeah. Every moment of this journey, you had to make a decision. Every moment of this, every minute, every second, you had to make a decision. In every one of those moments, you chose us because we were worth it. Jesus, I just pray that as we leave here today, that we won't lose that. That during the course of this week, that you will just constantly remind us, I did this for you, and you were worth it. I did this for you, and you were worth it. So come, Jesus. Pray over every heart that we have more hope leaving here than we walked in here with today. In your name we pray. Amen. Hey, thanks for being here today. Please don't leave. Just want to cover a few things with you. So, if you want to know more about getting connected, next steps, go out the door, turn left, room called the garage. If you want prayer, people under the screens to my right and my left, right after we say see you next week, come on down here. People will be there to meet you, greet you, and pray with you. Hey, if you believe in what God's doing in this place, you want to jump on mission with us financially, we'd love that. We don't pass anything or pressure. We just hang boxes on the wall. Or you can hit our app or our website, not YouVersion. Don't go there. Our website, if you want to give online, that's great if you're an online person. I'll be out by the fireplace if you want to talk to me, so hang tight. I'll be right out there in just a second. One thing, Easter's coming. Yeah, Easter's kind of a big deal. It's kind of a big deal around here. We're going to have 5 services, same 4 and 6 on Saturday night. Sunday morning is going to shift, okay? So 8:30, 10, 11:30. Sunday morning is going to be packed out. Would you please consider coming and inviting your friends on Saturday night? It would really, really help us out with what's going to happen here on Sunday morning. So we are going to give, you need to know this, we'll have invite cards ready for you next weekend. We're going to give $5 this year for every person that shows up, sits in a seat in here on Easter to help foster kids and foster families in our city. So yeah, you can give it up for that, all right? Hey, push. My elders are going to freak out, but I hope we write a check for over $30,000. All right, I want to write a check for over $30,000. So get your friends here. The card says your seat matters. It's all about who we're going to be helping on Easter and all of that. So, hey, grab invite cards starting next week. But for today, here's something you can do. When you came in, I don't know if you noticed, right in front of the slat wall out there, there's sign-up tables. We need your help. Would you attend one and serve one this Easter? So attend one, you and your family, you're going to serve one in some capacity. We need your help around here. And then boom, you're going home, you're getting out of the building because we need the space. Okay, so serve one, attend one. If you'd really think about that, all right, let's pray about it. Jesus, tell them right now, yes. Okay, there we go. And then you're going to go out the table. The table's right there. Great people to meet and greet you. Love to have your help. It's going to take a lot of us to really pull off excellence, and so that all of our unchurched friends that are going to come in here, we're more than doubled on Easter weekend, are going to have a great experience. You can help be a part of that. So please do that. All right? Hey, hope you have a great week. Hope you come back for the next. We'll pick it up right there in the story next weekend. I'll be out by the fireplace if you want to see me. Have a great week.
Staring into your eyes makes my heart come alive. Suddenly brought to life when I met you. 1, 2, 3, jump! This is real love. This is real love.